The 2024 Southern Conference, Tom Daglis, Compensation Packages and Negotiations.
This gentleman's resume is so long, I only picked a few high points. Tom is a two-term president of USPTA National. He's a master professional. He ran Ferris State, Methodist College, and Berry College PTM programs. He is the USPTA Southern Hall of Famer, USTA Mississippi President, and career coach for McMahon Careers. And one word to describe Tom is an educator. Tom Daglis.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I have a lot of information, I think, here. So what I'm going to do is go through it pretty quickly. At the end, if you send me your email, I'll send you a copy of the presentation, so you don't need to take notes, and it's pretty self-sufficient. But I think it'd be a good idea toward the end just to answer any questions from the group here. That would be more helpful. But let me go through the information because I think it's valuable and I think it will help you. So first, let's talk about what we're going to do today. These are the topics I'm going to go through. Do your homework, what are you going to do for them, negotiable items, how it applies to facilities, and then some conclusion to the process. So, as a search consultant, I'm in business now doing a lot of it, and it's interesting how we talk to a lot of the people that are looking for jobs because a lot of them are not prepared. They don't know how to go about interviewing, but it really has to do with have you done a lot of your research, have you done a lot of your homework, and if you don't have the information up front, then you're not going to be able to display yourself in an inviting way. So here's what I think is important for the research. Call the hired entity to find out exactly what they want in a new hire. You might even want to talk to the person who's leaving that job. Also, can you define your teaching philosophy or style? A lot of times, everybody has an idea of what they do, but not everybody's the same way. Are you more of a regimented technique coach, or are you more of a fun event planner? But you need to know exactly what your strengths are. Check out what the membership information is. How big a membership is it? What types of membership? Is there a separate tennis and social membership, or is it all under one umbrella? What's the median age of the membership? How many members live within a 3-mile radius? That's an important factor because that's people that you're going to be able to bring to the club on a regular basis. So if you're at a club where someone's got to travel 45 minutes to get to the club, you're going to probably see them once or twice a week, and that's it. How many kids or grandkids are at the club? And is the club a member equity or corporate owned? I think that makes a big difference because it reflects to how the operation of that club is, and also the wealth of the club makes a big difference. Amenities. I can't tell you when I talk to some people, they haven't even checked to see how many tennis courts are at the facility that they're applying for. What type of court surfaces? Are there permanent pickleball courts? That's becoming the big focus. These clubs are investing money in pickle. Whether you like it or not, it's there. And the clubs are doing it from member demand. So you need to know that. Number of lighted courts. I recently had a job out in California where we got someone a job out there, and there was only one lighted court out of the 12-court facility. Well, that kind of affects what you can do at night. So that's information you need to know up front. Pools, fitness, spa, dining, it's all part of the package. You need to know what is at the club and what amenities are available. And then what are the peak times? What are the dead times? You need to know that. And that's information you need to get from either the club itself, if you have a contact with a member, or from even the past director. Then the budget. What is the budget? That tells you everything. It tells you where the emphasis is with the club. And what is the percentage of the entire budget? So you have a department budget and you have the entire budget of the club. If your budget for the department is 10% of the entire club or less, well, that kind of tells you where the focus is, and you need to know that up front. How many staff members are involved? I like to ask, how large a food and beverage operation? If you're looking at a country club, what's the food and beverage operation? Because that dollar amount will tell you how much the members are using the club. And then what does an organizational chart look like? Where are you on the organizational chart? I mean, you have a GM, you might have different departments, you might have maintenance people, you might have pro shop people. Sometimes you report to the golf department and then to the GM. You know what the organizational chart looks like. What's the lesson volume? And in other words, how much instructional money is coming into the club? That tells you a little bit about how active the club is. How many directors or pros they've had in the last 5 years? That'll tell you something about the how much they enjoy the club, or how much the pros are getting their value from the club. Is there a tennis committee? How involved are they? And some tennis committees are advisory, and some want to run the show. I think you need to know that up front. If you come into a club to run a club, and you have to have access to a committee that's directing you what to do, that kind of takes away from your talents. Is it a charge-only club? That makes a difference on if someone can just come in and take a lesson and it goes to the club charge account. That could be better than having to pay for cash. What is the club's most successful event? I think that's another big thing. Know what the people like. Try to find out. You know what you do well, but you want to find out what they like at the club, and you want to make sure that you can make sure you continue some of those successful events. And here's an area that I think that we don't put enough attention in. We're always asking, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? But what are you going to do for them? You're coming in and asking for a job at a member, or even if it's a commercial club, a service-oriented club job. What are you going to do for them? So, in other words, you need to have to know what your character traits are and what your strengths are. And I have some handouts. Oh, great, okay. But this is something that Dave Stevenson put together that is fantastic. But this is stuff you put on your resume. Find out what you describe yourself as, and then be able to tell a interviewer what you're good at and what your qualities are. I think that's very important. What skills do you have? What do you do best? What do you do better than anybody else? I think that's important. You might be a private lesson expert, or you might be a court management for drills, and you do that best. Or you might have pro shop qualities pro shop management that you do best. Or you might have the personality to deal with the members best, and you can do an event better than anybody else. But you need to know what you do best, and you need to sell that. So next, I want to talk about the bottom line, because we always talk about money. And there's really two ways to affect the bottom line. You can either increase the amount of money that you're bringing in, or you can find ways to decrease your expenses, which will give you the highest bottom line. And there's a lot of ways to do that. So I want to talk about negotiable items of a contract. These are items that I have seen work. Obviously, there's a lot of them, and they're not all going to be effective for every club. But they're out there, and some pros are doing it. So I think it's good to kind of know what kind of negotiation tools you may have. So let me put out some first. Obviously, everybody would like to get a stipend or a salary of some kind. Everybody would like to have the highest percentage they can for the commission or lessons. Whether you can get a percentage from your assistant pros, whether a facility will cover your professional dues, whether there will be a stipend or line item for education. Do they cover medical and health insurance, life insurance? All these different things add up that affect your bottom line, can make a big difference. Meals on the job. We recently placed someone that at a club where They provide lunch and dinner for the staff, the entire staff. Well, they know that they're working there all the time, and they have that available. That adds up very fast. Tournament entry fees. Some facilities want someone to come in and be the star of the community and promote the club as a player. Well, they should pay the entry fees if they're going to be marketing the club when they go out and play tournaments. Those tournament entry fees could be covered. Transportation expenses for commuting. Here's an interesting. I know someone that he was fixed at a salary, and he had bumped up every year for his salary. And at one point, the club said, "Look, we just can't keep increasing your salary. The club can't afford it." So they said, "Well, what else can we do for you?" So he ended up bringing his car to the Gulf side, and they filled up his tank with gas every week. Now, he had a big truck, and it was like $75 to fill up the truck. He did it every week. That's a $300 a month bump. He was able to work that out with the club. So that you can be creative on how you increase some of your or decrease some of your expenses. Paid vacations, profit sharing. When you talk to some profit sharing, that could be on an event. It could be on what you're bringing into the club. You know, sometimes a lot of, especially the country clubs, there's a lot of events that they do on Mondays. And is there a way for you to capitalize on bringing in more people for an event where the club dining gets more money and you actually end up benefiting their big picture? A retirement plan. How many of you have a retirement plan? Okay. Family membership. Not every club allows family membership. I know when I was at Atlanta Country Club that they didn't want the family there, but some clubs, it's a big perk, and some people won't take a job unless their family can use the club. And that's a big deal. Performance bonuses. So a lot of times you'll get a salary, you'll get a stipend, and maybe that number isn't quite where you want to go, and the club will say, okay, well, if you reach these numbers, we'll give you a bonus. Sometimes it's up to 25% of the salary, and that could be a pretty big number. Or it could be in increments. You know, if you get to this point, you get X amount of dollars. If you get to the next point, X amount of dollars. If you bring more people into the club, there's a bonus. If you affect the bottom line, there's a bonus. We used to do events for the club manager vendors, and when we did that, the club manager actually made money based on bonus, and part of his deal was he made a big bonus if the club hit a certain number. So our job was to help him get that number, and then he was able to help us quite a bit. So we would actually do events for all the vendors. We put on round robins, which we do in our sleep, and did it for the vendors, which ended up helping the GM with some of their deals, and he was able to make his bonuses better. Ball machine revenue. You know, there's a way to make money from that. Concessions. Does anybody have concessions as part of their? Okay. There's a gentleman in Atlanta, and he had the icy concession, and he'd bring it out to the pool during the summer. It was on wheels, a little icy machine. We sold them $2 a piece. He had 16 cents in the cup of the icy, and he made a fortune during the summer selling ices. He was his concession. But sometimes that could be a big deal. So sometimes there's vending machines you can put if you have access to that. If you're at a private club, maybe not, but if you're at a commercial club, there might be a way to do it. Guest fees. You know, a lot of times clubs just don't want the hassle with a guest fee. And if you can work out a deal where you coordinate that and take that load off the club, take all the hassle from that, maybe there's a way to get a percentage of that. People are doing that. Tennis balls and teaching carts. I mean, we have set expenses on what we're doing. And the tennis ball cost is going up. That's something that every pro should be able to negotiate. Court fees. Sometimes if you're at a commercial club again or a public facility, there's a way to get your court fees as a percentage. Special event proceeds. If you do an event and you're the one doing all the marketing, you're the one doing all the promoting, and you're bringing people in to benefit the club, is there a way to get the proceeds from that? It doesn't have to be all of it, but it could be a percentage. Same with corporate outings. Cell phone expense. Anybody here get a cell phone expense? You're on your phone all the time. I mean, that should be a no-brainer. I guarantee the GMs are getting that, and you're using your phone, you should be able to get a way to decrease some of your expenses with that. Accommodations, temporary residence, depending on what type of facility you're at, or if you move to a facility, sometimes there's ways for them to pay for you for the next 6 months for an apartment until you find a place to live. These are areas that you can negotiate for. I will share with you when I went to Lakewood in DC, they gave me a stipend for 6 months until I could know the area. I went into an apartment for 6 months until I could find where I wanted to live, and they covered all that. I mean, that's a big deal. Moving expense. Moving now is a very big expense. I've seen as high as $20,000 depending on where you move, but that's a big number. And if it's something that you negotiate with the club up front, I can guarantee GMs are doing it, and in the corporate world, it is a staple. It's common. You need to be able to take advantage of that. A lot of times we just don't know what to ask for. How are you paid? Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. At one club I was at, I would get my commission check once a month, and it would really tick me off because they're making money. They're putting, that's my money they're holding, and they're making money on interest. I get paid once a month for that, so that makes a big difference. Can you teach non-members? That's a big negotiable item. And if you're going to promote that, you need to have some proof. You need to have some be able to defend. Hey, I just can't make enough money from the members who aren't doing this, but if I add some other people, I can build a program. It's going to help the constituency, and you benefit from that. Can you use courts to teach on in the evening? I've seen clubs where juniors can stop at 6 o'clock. They're not allowed to use the courts after 6 o'clock. Well, that makes a big difference on what you can do as far as teaching. Or the courts are only open to open play at night. Sometimes in the indoor facilities, that's a big deal. So you want to be able to define that. Can you use the courts at night? Is there an award or trophy budget? Now, everybody runs events, and everybody does give some kind of favors or awards. But if it's in the budget, and you get a net percentage of the event, well, that's one expense item that you don't have to worry about because it goes to the club budget, not your budget, and that means you're going to make more money. Can you run sanction events? I will say that's a big deal at this club here. They run some UST events that are very big, and there's a lot of money to be made in sanction events. How many days per week are required to be at the club? That's a negotiable item. Is there an office? Is there somebody that you call your home? Who sets the lesson rates? Does anybody here set their own lesson rates, or does the club set them? Okay. So you know your value, and your lesson rates need to reflect that. Instead of having the club tell you what to, that's sort of an area where it's conflict of interest with the club if they're setting your lesson rates because they want a better rate. You need to know what your value is. And you need to know what the area is offering. Is there a contract? I'm not really big on contracts because, first of all, most states now are right to fire. So contracts really don't mean anything. I would much rather have a letter of understanding so you know what the club expects from you and what you expect from the club. But most contracts now have clauses in there that either party can terminate in 60 days, 90 days with a written notice. So it's really like a 90-day contract. It's not really a contract return.
So you say most facilities still do contracts, or they do letter of guarantees?
I'm saying that is there a contract that you have to work under, or is it just a letter of understanding so you understand what your terms are?
Okay.
I don't believe in contracts because I just think they don't hold water. So sometimes someone says, okay, I'd like to have a 5-year contract. It's easy to get out of a contract. So especially, like I said, a lot of the states now have right to hire, right to fire. So it really doesn't make a difference. But most of them have termination clauses in them that are set by 60, 30, 30, 60, 90 days. So just give written notice by either party and there goes your contract. Laptop expense, internet expense. I mean, those are things that you have to pay for. And is it something that they will cover? I mean, you have to realize you're doing all this for their benefit. All right, so my next area is pro shop. So in the pro shop, not everybody, I would say the trend is for the club to own the pro shop. But if you can get the pro shop, there's definitely a way to make some money with there. Maybe not big money, but there's different ways to make money with the pro shop. So let's talk about that a little bit. Well, get the sound off of that. Sorry, 1 second. That's too noisy for me. So, if you get the pro shop concession, do you have to pay rent for it, for the space? Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. Depends on the volume. Who owns the inventory? Sometimes there's a negotiable deal where the facility will give you certain options, and you're responsible for the inventory. What kind of volume is required? At one club, I had the pro shop. I've had 5 pro shops at different clubs, and one of them said, okay, you have the pro shop, but we want you to keep at least a $50,000 inventory in the pro shop. That's a big commitment. But you need to know that, what the expectation is. Who pays utilities?
I'm sorry, when you left, did they buy your inventory from you?
I had a deal with them to buy the inventory, yes. Another place I had, they could only buy the logo inventory. So that was the only thing they'd commit to. So that was something I had to liquidate before leaving. Everything else beside the logo. So it really depends. Who pays utilities? Trash removal. Who pays? I mean, these are simple things that run a business that you don't realize. But sometimes if they say, hey, you're going to run your separate business, you're responsible for all of it, these are things you can negotiate for. Electricity expense. There was one pro shop I worked at where I got an electric bill for the square footage of the shop. Telephone expense. All right, what about staffing? I mean, what's the expectation for the club? And sometimes you can negotiate a pro shop manager or a staff person who's also going to be a receptionist, which is an advantage to the club. And the person has dual roles, and that might be a way for you to add employee to your business that helps the club. Security system. Sometimes it's required by the club. Sometimes it's in your best interest to have a security system. Inventory insurance, fire and theft. I guarantee the golf shops have that. And in fact, at one club, we had the golf shop was flooded, and they lost all their inventory from the flood. But the person had inventory insurance and was able to recoup it. Office supplies, no-brainer. Office equipment, copy machine. I was at one club where they would charge me for copies. I mean, and that can be expensive when you're doing your events. Pro shop fixtures, who pays for that? And if they're your pro shop fixtures, can you take them and leave with them? A department computer. A stringing machine. Who owns the stringing machine? Do they provide it? Is it something that you provide? Advertising budget. Again, that's these are areas, if you have a deal with the club that you can get the club to sign off on, that could be a big advantage to your business. This, I think, is one of the biggest ones. Right of assignment. Maybe you're not an expert in pro shop, but if you have the concession for the pro shop and you have the right of assignment, you might be able to go down to a brick and mortar store down the road and say, hey, come in and bring your inventory and just give me a small percentage. You have no cost in the inventory, but you have the right to operate the pro shop, and it'll look great. That's very big in Atlanta, where there was companies that did that for several clubs, and they would rotate their inventory from club to club to club. So it looked like you were always bringing in new stuff, but it was actually from that business they were moving that from club to club.
Well, that's fascinating. Can you elaborate on that? So you had a club, and then you had the rights to the pro shop.
Right.
And then you went to another in-town business, and you said, why don't you put all your stuff in mine and just give me a small percentage of it?
Exactly.
And then you can rotate it in and out every 3 months.
Exactly.
And I'll help you I'll help you move it or something. And wow.
Well, very little investment on your point, right?
I've never that blows my mind that you could pull that off.
It's not unusual.
It's not unusual.
It's not unusual.
It's not unusual.
Oh.
It's not.
And it makes you look like a hero, because it looks like you're bringing in great stuff all the time. And a lot of times these brick and mortar stores just see it as easy access to the members that belong to the club, instead of having to travel to their business.
Well, what's the usual cut on something like that if you have the right of is it like 10 or 15 or 20?
It's across the board. I've seen as much as 30%. But it's across the board. It depends on activity, the affluency of the club. I mean, if you're at a club that's a very high affluent club, it's a benefit for them to have their inventory very accessible to that membership on a daily basis.
How long did you stay at the club that charged you for copies?
A year and a half.
What about the one that required 50,000 in inventory? How long?
I was there for almost 4 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I made a lot of money on the pro shop. It was good. They wanted to be the best pro shop in the area, and it was in Metro DC, which was a high affluent area. So that was worth it to me.
Yeah. Copies can be a deal breaker.
Copies was a deal breaker. By the way, you just made those copies I just made.
You gonna charge us for the copies?
How much do you think those copies cost? I just got to ask you a question.
I don't pay for copies in my place, so I don't know.
Well, I had to go to Office Depot to get the copies made.
They're like 2 cents, right?
2 cents.
No.
They're 40 cents each.
Oh, wow.
20 cents for each side.
See, it's only gets better.
Copy cost has gone way up.
I was gonna throw it away down the
What type of clothing restrictions? Is it an all-white apparel club? Can you sell logos? Can you have access to the logos? This one club that I had, where I had the $50,000 inventory, it was next to the pool. I was able to sell accessories. I sold pool goggles, and one of my biggest sellers were logo tattoos that you put on your arm for the kids. They jump in the pool and wash off. They come out and buy another one, and they're like $5 a piece. It was a great moneymaker. But I was able to do that next to the club because it's next to the pool.
You're promoting swimming. Go to the diving board.
A buying club. Anybody has access to a buying club? You know what that is? That's where you work through your membership and say, okay, everybody pays a monthly fee, and you get 10%. You get everything cost plus 10%. But you have that income coming in every month from the membership, and it's part of their dues. There's a lot of golf pro shops that operate that way, where they know they're going to get that money in every month because it's coming in from the dues, and basically they're operating a service for the membership. The members get a better deal, but they're actually paying for that through dues. Yes.
On that note, recently a club near us just instituted a club-wide merchandising fee, like a minimum. So like you have your food and beverage minimum, they've just instituted a merchandising minimum that you have to pay, I think it's $500 a year maybe, I don't know, quarter or something. They said, this is what it is now, you have to buy from us at least this amount, otherwise we're just going to charge you $500. That's new to me. But that speaks to kind of the buying club. They just call it merchandising minimum.
You know, I have not heard that before, but it makes sense because they want the members to
Buy it. If we're going to offer these products,
Right.
you're going to have to guarantee you're going to buy it.
Right. Especially if there's logo and stuff involved, and all the members want to do that anyway. And you can charge a lot for that, so
That's golf and tennis, though. So it could be either.
interesting.
Marcus, are they charging full retail or a discounted member price?
Whatever it is, there's not like a
Retail.
member, you know,
Oh, wow.
that's a lot.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's interesting.
I'm going to add it to my list. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, might take that back to
Oh, members,
my GM real quick.
members did not.
He might like you a lot after you say
The
that.
owner of the club stood and did a PowerPoint presentation. That was part of it. So like,
Wow.
it didn't go down well for those members.
But you know, members they're used to paying for things,
Right.
and especially the food and beverage. I mean, they're used to that, and it makes sense. And if you don't abuse it, I could see it being an advantage to the club, really. So, this is a lesson pyramid. And I put this together because not everybody has access to salaries and everything. But can you make some money just from lesson commission? So I put some numbers together, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here. This is a staff of one head pro, 3 assistant pros, and a director. And each one is benefiting from the other person. In other words, the director is benefiting from everybody, the head pro is benefiting from the assistants, and the assistants are on the bottom of the ladder, and they're doing lots of leg work, they're making their money. But if a head pro doesn't have can't do a lesson, give it to the assistant because that person's going to make some money from that person through a percentage. So when you put the numbers together, it actually is pretty interesting. So here's a sample. And this is a tennis director charging $70 an hour. Head pro 65, assistant pro 60. It's tiered. I happen to think that's a good way to do it. But everybody's giving 15% back to the club, which is becoming pretty much a staple now. The director is getting 15% from the head pro, and each of the assistant pros is getting 15%. The head pro gives 15% back to the club, 15% to the director, and he's getting 10% from each of the assistant pros. And the assistant pros, 15% back to the club, 15% back to the director, and 10% go back to the head pro. So it's literally a team format. So when you look at the numbers, I don't know if you can see those numbers really well here, but again, I'm going to send this to you if you want it. And this is based on 25 hours, just everybody teaching 25 hours a week, which is not an overload. So some of the numbers I got with that. You got a tennis director making $109,000 a year from this system and without a salary. You have a head pro making $71,000 a year, and you have assistant pros making $40,000 a year. That's at 25 hours a week. So that's not, it's a way to compensate if you can't give everybody salaries. And everybody works as a team, so no lessons, everybody's looking out for the other person to make sure that we're filling a lot of lesson books. I thought that was valuable. So next, let's talk about facility operations. And each one's a little bit different. You got commercial, country club, municipality, and resort. And I've happened to work at each one of these. So each one was very different. So let's talk about commercial first. What are some of the applications for commercial? Well, everybody knows commercial clubs are bottom line oriented. There's lower stipends, there's lower salaries, but there's higher lesson volume in these clubs. But they are all bottom line oriented. If you're someone who doesn't like to be under pressure to hit certain numbers, that's not a bad way to go. Country clubs, a little bit more stability. It's all about the member experience. And often there's some pretty strong comp packages. But you're dealing with a lot of personalities and high demand from members, which can be difficult. And if anybody wants to share country club member stories, I've got a ton of them. But,
That's its own presentation right there.
happy to share those later on when it's not on tape. Municipality, the city jobs, they're good benefits. Lots of red tape, lots of reporting, and it sort of takes away from the entire job. And when I did the Rome Tennis Center, I was not on the court at all, but boy, the amount of red tape and reporting you had to do for that was unbelievable. And then resort. Interesting about resorts, real estate could be an advantage. Housing could be an advantage. Sometimes some of these resorts will give you a condo temporarily. Or sometimes they'll say, hey, come in and you have access to get a discount on buying a lot or something like that. The problem is they're often corporate owned and they're often sold to make a profit from those corporations. So there's not a lot of stability sometimes. Every time a new corporation comes in, they want to clean house and start all over. So those are some of the applications that when you look at a job, know some of the pros and cons. So here are my thoughts on the conclusion. When to interview. There's a lineup, okay? So you don't really know sometimes when you're going to be in relation to everybody else. But in my experience, it's better to be one of the last people that they interview. Because what I have found is, if you're the first person that they interview and they fall in love with you, then they relate you to every other person next that they're going to interview. Then at the very end, they have someone coming in who's fresh, and that person might be almost identical to you, but because they're fresh in that person's mind, they often go with that person. So the person who excelled in the very beginning doesn't really get the value or the benefit of being in the lineup. And sometimes you don't have a choice, but if you do have a choice, I always like to say, try to be toward the end. What to bring to an interview? Know how many people will interview you. I've been interviewed for a lot of jobs, didn't get them all. And I've been in some rooms where there's 16 people. There's no spotlight, but that feels like there's a spotlight on you. Know how many people are going to be interviewing you, and make sure that you're dressed for success. I think that's so important. We do a lot of Zoom interviews, and you'd be surprised that we set up the Zoom interview, and a person comes in and they're doing the Zoom interview from their car in tennis clothes. All right, maybe they don't have time to do anything, but set up your time, because it's not a good look for the business. And remember, when people see you in tennis clothes, they just don't equate you as a business person. They equate you as, well, you're a recreational person. You're having fun. You're not really serious, and you need to be serious if you're going for a job. Don't negotiate on promises. And often you'll have committees say to you, well, we just put some land to the side that we're going to build 6 more courts, so that's going to double the amount of money you made. It's not there. Negotiate what's there, then negotiate when that's built, I'll get this. So I never negotiate on promises. I always negotiate what exactly is visible and is in place. So a couple final thoughts, and then I'd like to get some questions from everybody. I thought this was apropos. If you really look closely, most overnight successes took a long time. So it's not easy, and you got to put in, you got to plant the seeds, you got to water them, and you got to do it over and over again, because it does take some time to be successful. I thought this was great. Yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. Everybody says, what are you doing for me today? And I don't care what you did yesterday. How are you going to impress me today? And you have to make sure that you have new ideas and change things up so that you're making the home run for the day. And this is probably the most important thing. You don't build a business, you build the people, and then the people build the business. Don't try to be a one-all person. If you get burnt out, you can't be as successful. You need to have the support. And find the right people to help you build that support. Make sure they're successful and you'll be successful. So, if you like a copy of this, just shoot me an email and I will just mail you the PowerPoint. But let me open it up. Any specifics in some of your negotiations that you want to talk about or ask about, and if I can assist you with that. Yes, Bob?
I had a question about education, which when you're negotiating education packages, I never could kind of like understand where that money, especially member-owned clubs, where it comes from sometimes, because sometimes I feel like that number can kind of like change drastically. You know, you could get like 500 or 1,000, or you could get like 5,000 a year for continuing education and conferences and those kinds of things. And it's all part of the bundle. But like for me, looking to be a director, I'm also looking for an education budget that it also includes education for everybody underneath me, right? So that I can build strong people, like Zig Ziglar was saying. So can you elaborate on some of the tactics or some of the standards that you've seen for what is a normal education package in member-owned country clubs? We'll just go that route.
Yeah, first of all, I would say don't negotiate for an education stipend or line item for yourself. Always do it for the department. It's an easier sell because you're everybody's improving, not just you. And sometimes when you say, okay, I want something just for me to go to conferences or my education, it's kind of selfish. But if you say if it's for the department, usually you can get more money for the department, and it's an easier sell. But I would also make sure that you know if your GM's a CMAA GM, because I guarantee they have big education stipends in their budgets. So if you're talking to someone who that's what they're accustomed to doing, it's an easier sell. If it's someone who is not certified club manager, doesn't do much, it's a tougher sell. So I would try to get that information. But as far as a number, $5,000 for education for a department is not unusual. Yes, sir.
To the club manager part, Tom, I was shocked because I was looking to go to my GM about getting involved in CMAA and going to their conference, and I looked at Vegas this year, and I think just the registration fee was $1,200 or $1,400 just for the registration.
And you know, there's 3,000 club managers that go to those things. 3,000, and it's big money. They go to big places, and it's a big investment.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they're accustomed to. So you need to make sure that you're talking to the right people before you negotiate. Do some of that research again. It's so important to do your homework, I think, because, as I said, if you don't know these things, it's hard to ask for them. I mean, you need to find out what, and also what's in the surrounding area. You need to know what the local people around you are doing so that you can negotiate better. I mean, if the lesson rates are low and the people around you are making a lot of money bumping up fees, you need to be able to. The GMs don't know. You need to be able to sell it to them. You need to be able to educate them.
Tom, just to add to what you're saying, this used to be more common, but a good way to sell it, boy, Tom knows the GM I work for, and he's a detail guy, CPA, and he wants everything written down. I want everything in front of me. But a way for me to sell it to him is to be able to say, this is what the guys get at the conferences, and this is what they gave it. And you can even write something that say, here's what I learned while I was at this conference. That's something that we used to talk about when I was a young pro. I haven't heard about it over the last couple decades, but would be a good way for you to maybe put that money in the budget and say, here's what my guys are going to bring back.
Good point, very good point. Also, when you're dealing with resumes and everything, make sure you talk about percentages, what you're doing to improve percentages. Don't do numbers like, I got 50 more ladies, or to do a league play. That doesn't compute. Everybody in the corporate world is dealing with percentages and variances. So you need to be able to say, I improved it by 18%, I improved it by 35%. That computes much better than just a number. So I strongly advise if you're doing a resume, include your percentages over just real numbers. Yes, sir.
So you listed the facilities on there, municipalities, country clubs, commercial, all these different ones. And if you took in these member-owned clubs, which I think is kind of like, okay, that's probably where you can make the most amount of money. That's probably where if you're aspiring to be a director, that's kind of where you'd love to see that. Member-owned clubs are becoming less and less and less and less and less, I think, around the country. Every one of those facilities that you listed up there are now being run by large groups, private equity groups.
Management groups.
Management groups. You've got the largest management group in the world now with like Drysdale, going people, washing resorts and that kind of thing. So, and it kind of goes to some of the contracts you were sort of talking about, negotiating and the pyramid that you have. When you've got management groups in there, slicing off that top part, the director has to share so much so that pyramid there's no point to the pyramid because it's being split up amongst all these other groups. It's a huge, huge change. If you look around every city, the Lifetimes coming in, the Midtowns, the everything. Like that's now what, 80%? Like that would be interesting to know, like how many of these clubs are now just autonomous, individually run, or how many, and then then you don't have a negotiating tool because they're bullying you on these contracts. Right. So that's an interesting part that nobody ever really talks about, and who gets left behind is the director.
I agree with you that it's becoming less, and I don't have a real number to tell you, but there's a lot of HOAs out there that don't want to use management contracts or aren't aware of them. And someone who has got some good business skills can really work out. They would love to be able to say, hey, 15% of all the wrestling revenue is going to the HOA. They'd love that, rather than having to pay a big management fee up front. Usually those fees are an initial fee and then a percentage of everything else too. So it depends on the business, obviously. HOAs, there's some HOAs out there with some great tennis complexes, and I think now with pickleball, I think there's a way to capitalize on that. But the management companies, they're making their way in, and it is difficult. I personally don't like to work for a management company. I don't want to be dictated on my efforts to be successful, but they exist. But the clubs are paying a price for it. And you know what? If you go into a club and with a business plan and say, here, you've got this management company, here's what I can do, I'm doing the same thing, and you're going to end up having a better bottom line, I mean, that's a business decision for them.
Who are you negotiating with, though? Are you negotiating with the general manager there, or are you negotiating with the regional person or the national person? And what leverage do you have as a pro to get all these things that you could negotiate? Because they say we don't do that.
Yeah, I don't think you can negotiate with the management company because they're say. I think you have to talk to the club owner. A lot of these clubs are owned by a corporation or a group of people that are partners or LLC, and you can negotiate with them because they all want to make money, and the management groups are taking away a lot of that. I agree with that.
So you're saying go around the management company that manages you to the owners to negotiate extra?
It's not possible if you're talking about a corporation. They won't go above the general manager plan.
But if it's a club that's managed by a management company, then you could. If it's a management company or corporation, they don't usually have a lot of leeway in their negotiations. They say, this is what it is, take it or leave it. You're going to make this much here or nothing else. The problem is when all these clubs are doing the same thing, there's no movement in the market because they're just stifling everything. So.
And don't discount what you bring to the table because they're used to bringing in people that they can control with their money, and that kind of dilutes the quality. But if you're a high performer, you can sell that, and that's a big negotiating tool.
That's the hardest part, is that you feel like you just want to get the job, but you're not pushing yourself, or we're not, as pros, we're not geared to push for more, and everyone just sort of settles. They could have got so much more, but they do that for a living, and you teach tennis lessons. It's very hard, it's very intimidating, and there's a lot of bullying that goes on.
I think bullying is a good word, but I will add that when you look very closely, a lot of these clubs, they don't stay with management companies long. They change. It becomes, management companies want to keep bumping up things, so it becomes less cost effective for them to stay in business with them. So a lot of times they're open for different ideas.
Tom, because you're facilitating between candidates and positions now, what are you seeing trending in a variety of areas?
Well, I'm definitely seeing the salaries for directors are going up, because I think a lot of the GMs are understanding that a person can't just be on the court making all the money and still run a business. So I think that message is getting through. I will say that 90% of them, a percentage of lesson instruction is going back to the club, which did not used to be the idea. And a lot of clubs want the pro shop still, and they'll combine it a lot often with the golf pro shop, because the golf knows what they're doing and the tennis usually doesn't. So they usually have the purchasing or the pro shop manager from the golf do all the inventory and control for the tennis as well, and it's still under the same umbrella of the club. So I'm seeing that trend. But I'm seeing the salaries going up for directors.
To your point, and you know this, but just to let everybody know, there's a position open right now at the club where I used to be, and the salary is almost double what I was paid when I was there. So that's to your point.
How many years ago?
That was about 17, 18 years ago, but it's still, I mean, that's huge to be double what I made back then.
Yeah.
And I'll add that no percentage is going back to the club. And they want to give away the pro shop. This is like an old school job. So, I mean, I'd say those are rare now, but they still exist. Yes, Al. Oh, I was going to say hi.
I've always been kind of nervous about that negotiation stage once you're there. I've been reassured that I'm being irrational here, but once you've kind of agreed to a position, it starts the negotiation process. I've always been, think to Marcus's point, to ask for more, to ask for more and more so that, you get what you're worth. But then, and a lot of times, especially if it's like the first opportunity, you don't want them to run away and say, never mind, we're going to go over with this other guy. That's the irrational fear in the back of your brain, or at least my brain. Maybe some other people have it here. That goes, well, I don't want him to go away, and I'll be willing to take less for that first opportunity, or for a new opportunity because I'm in a gym. I'm definitely want out of my current club, or I just got canned and I need a job really bad. Those kinds of pressures. Have you ever seen it happen to where you get into the negotiation stage and then they walk it back and they say, never mind, we're going to go number 2 candidate?
I have not seen that, because they fall in love with the person they want. And you got to know what you're good at. You got to know what you're bringing to the table, and that's what you sell. The best time to negotiate is going to be right then. You're not going to have opportunity to really do much more negotiating. In fact, I will add, in my opinion, if you're a head pro at a club, it's hard to become a director at that club. And I think it's because, the members see you as this rate. All of a sudden you're a director and you're asking for more. Well, you're the same person. Why should I pay you more money just because you're the director? So I do think you need to bring to the table what you offer, and don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. All they can say is, yeah.
All they can say is no. Yeah, that's the rational part, but
Believe what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
And prove it. Yes.
Interesting what you said about it's hard being that head pro and then making that director, because I see in our local area anyway, Atlanta area, like, the decision for head pros, who, by the way, I think head pros are making really good money right now. So you see a head pro, maybe they're an assistant director, and they think that they're in line maybe for that top job. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, but I think sometimes they're disillusioned that that's the move they're going to make. And they're making really good money as a head pro. Are they willing to take a step back to being a director at a smaller club, and in some cases make $70,000 less than they did as a head pro, because now they have to go to this second tier club as a director? That's a strange choice to make for a tennis pro doesn't know this world that well. What advice would you give someone? Because the top tier clubs aren't going to go for a first time director usually. And like you said, that's going to be tough. But if they're waiting for that move,
A lot of it has to do with work-life balance. Yeah, you're going to make less money because you were on the court teaching your brains out to make all that money, and you can make a lot of money teaching. But what are you going to do for the rest of your life? So I think it's career choices, it's career path, and you have to make your decisions based on the work-life balance, I think. But I think it's difficult to stay at a club and work your way all the way up.
I think people think that that's a natural progression, but it's like, wait, that's not even a lateral move, it's a better move for your profession. You're going to make less, you're probably going to work longer.
I agree.
But I don't know if people see that there's that transition.
All right, I'm getting the hang, so thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Tom.